Look it up. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Dharma Master.
Oh, goodness. Okay, let's it's now time to start, but we're going to take just a few minutes to make sure we've got all our moving pieces connected, and then we'll start. Sam, we've got it. You want to make sure everything's hooked up?
So can everyone hear clearly?
Yes, Sam, we can see you. A bit too clear.
A bit too clear. Okay, I don't. So, Reverend Heng Sure said we will request the Dharma from here, our side. So later I will do the request Dharma.
Okay, JCA level, I think you have to increase a bit because normally vocal. Don't worry, I'll adjust the level as well. Okay.
Do we have any Singaporeans here? That's everybody this year. That's the 50th anniversary of Singaporean independence. National event. So if you've got a SG50 button, everybody's happy.
I like this one.
Yeah.
Fully carved out.
This is multi-purpose robe. It's warm in winter and cool in summer. Okay, there we go. We're going to begin with, actually with a Qingfa, because Sam is here with incense. He's going to request the Dharma. So we can request Dharma on both sides of the ocean. Can you do that one?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
well,
Yeah. Just
can you? Good.
yeah.
Just you can work. Okay, make it work. Chi
大德身体，为此法会尽一切众生，尽传妙法论，教导我们如何了生脱世，离苦得乐，速证无上。Will the Sangha be great virtue of our convention for the sake of this assembly and all living beings? Please turn the wonderful Dharma will to teach us how to live suffering, earth and bliss, and then birth and death, and quitting your lives non-birth.
Okay, now I'll give you a line and you give it back to me. Namo tassa
Namo tassa
bhagavato
bhagavato
arahato
arahato
samma sambuddhassa.
samma sambuddhassa.
Okay, homage to the blessed,
Homage to the blessed,
noble,
noble,
and perfectly enlightened one.
and perfectly enlightened one.
Excellent. I'll give you a line. Namo sadhanto
Namo saranto
suchedoye
suchedoye
balahadi
balahudi
samyao sanputoshe.
samyao sambuddhoshe.
Okay, this will stump the people who can't read Chinese. Huh? Here we go. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa,
百千万劫难遭遇，
我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Together, the subtle and profound, supreme and wondrous Dharma rarely is encountered even in advance. But now I see it, hear it, and accept it reverently. I vow to truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Okay. 师父上人，各位师兄，大家阿弥陀佛. All right. So, hi there, everybody. We're going to investigate all of the connections that are possible here. This is the first time we've tried to do a remote lecture for the Berkeley Monastery. And Berkeley, California, Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. is the key time that we're working from. Here, I'm in the Gold Coast, halfway between Banogan and Mudgeeraba, and it's now 12:40 here just at past noon on Sunday. So we're a day ahead of you. And I can see all of the good folks in Berkeley. And we don't have a camera that lets everybody see us, right?
Yeah.
You're all going to have to stand up and walk around and wave together. We have a good group of folks here, including Heng Sure from CTDB and also Jin Fang-shi from CTDB. Let's see, Sam is here, and we have 4 other Dharma friends who are regulars here on our Sunday meditation. And we mentioned today that there's going to be a sutra lecture, a pioneering effort to see whether it's possible. And we are very interested in folks' straight feedback about whether this is working or not. In terms of, do we want to sit for 90 minutes and listen to somebody over a loudspeaker and on a screen? See, Jin looks so eager. Clearly it's worth it for him, right? Jin Husher, what do you think? How about the quality of the audio and video there?
The audio is really good, but the video, I think maybe because you are in the other Buddha hall, it's not as good as Paramita house.
Really, huh?
Yeah, but when we'll find out when you share if you are sharing your screen and we have text, then we'll see.
I was actually thinking that today I was probably not going to try text, just to because what I was going to talk about doesn't actually require text today, but it was just for the experiment part to see how it works. If we want to, do you think we want to try? We need I think we'll have to do that next time. So let's just do it this way for now. You know what would be really nice is my impression sitting here in front of my computer in the Dharma hall here is that you all are far away. It's a function of the wide angle lens that there's probably nearly half of the frame is blank space between the camera and the front row of the cushions. And I saw Angela moved up, and but there's only half the frame is visible, and folks in the back, like, hey, Roberto, how are you in the back there? There he is. He's tiny. Roberto is tiny, doing the wave back there. Okay, that's good. See if we can get that working throughout the Buddha hall. See everybody waving. I see Fang Jiahua sitting there, and yay, all right. And if NYC is there on the right, and if there was any way to just slide for this lecture, if you just fill in, like slide the front row right up to the camera, or something like that. I can see.
I think I will move the camera forward instead, rather than everyone move.
Everybody stay still and move the camera. I see Connie is there. She just moved up, and Suzanne, the regulars, good. Excellent. Oh, there we go. And we lose on the peripheral, but yeah. Okay, there's Mai. Yeah, good. We don't have any Vietnamese translation today. So usually this is, and the balcony up here is the balcony at the Buddha Hall. And there's a simultaneous Vietnamese translation happening up there most weeks, which is great. All right, I see Feda is there. Super. It would be so nice to be able to introduce everybody so we can have a sense of real connection. So we have friends there from Hong Kong, from Vietnam, from Taiwan, from Holland, from as far away as Oakland, California, distant places. Oh, that's even better, yeah, we can see. Yeah, that's good. Good. Well, the miracles of modern technology, indeed. Great. And let's see, because this is a Macintosh, I think, let's see if I dare do this. Can I make it all go away? Yes. And there you can see Ali, the bird. That's Ali. So let you know where you are. You're here in Australia, which for those of you who don't know, Australia is spelled S-T-R-A-Y-A. Australia. Where are you from? From Australia. Right. Straya. Okay. Great. Well, lovely. I'm the presenter. Show my screen. This lets me know there's lots of good information happening. Now, is anybody monitoring the online presence? Are we going out to YouTube okay? How's that working? Yanlin, our tech
Yes,
advisor?
Father, we are going to YouTube, and 8 people are watching from there now.
Any comments about the quality of the webcast?
Someone said,
Should be no
Jason
different.
Farrow said it's working for him.
Okay, how about that? Nice. All right, so we're simultaneously going out to YouTube and looking at each other across the waves. Good. 2 things are making this work. One is prayer. That's one. But the other thing is the internet, broadband access, and this GoToMeeting software lets us do this. All right, good. So here's what I thought we might talk about today. And it was prompted by, this is an Avatamsaka Sutra lecture. So the Avatamsaka that's the Sanskrit name of a very large Buddhist sutra. Those orange volumes in the second row are one version of it, that many. Up on top, I'm pointing to a bookcase here in our Dharma hall. Up on top are all those brown and tan volumes. That's one chapter, not complete. It's the one chapter in progress. So all those golden volumes there are the whole sutra. It's a very large, massive book. And it represents something that the Buddha spoke. They say in our tradition, they say it's the first text that he ever talked about. And today what I thought I might do is go way back and bring up some basic ideas and get everybody's thoughts on them. Because the folks you're seeing in Berkeley, we follow our teacher's example. Do we have Shifu's picture? Can we, is it on the back? Can they see? So here's our teacher, and typical, that's the way we often saw him, kind of on his way to a lecture, and try to get it without the reflection there. So what our teacher did, he was a monk. He was a monk for 50 years and came from Manchuria in northeastern China. And he made it a priority every single day that he was in America. He made it a priority to take 90 minutes and explain texts. He opened a text, he just take the Chinese and just talk about it. It's called an exegesis. That's a theological word. And if you do exegesis, you're what's called an exegete, somebody who lectures. If you're Jewish, it's called midrash. You comment on texts. And he made that important. That was something he wanted to do. And what he told us he was doing was giving us the Buddha's voice. He wants to be heard in America and in the West and outside of Buddhist Asia. Now, why is that important, and why should we care about that? It's because that's rare. Most Buddhist monks don't make that part of their day. And Buddhist nuns, rarely. If you find a nun who is a sutra lecturer, a lecturer on sutras, on texts, rare. Doesn't happen much. So in other words, the Buddha's voice is getting harder to find. And so I learned my Buddhism from this teacher. I figured that was the way it was always done, that everybody did that. Only when I left our comfortable circle and went out traveling into the Buddhist world, I discovered, no, that's pretty uncommon to have somebody open the texts and say, here's what the Buddha said. What do you think? So, okay, that's one fact, that he did on text. He did it for 30 years. As a result, we have stacks and stacks and stacks of acetate reel-to-reel tapes that captured his voice. And we've been through all of the issues about preserving them, you know, what's the safest medium for keeping them for the future. And of course, Master Hua would say, well, memorize them. Safest medium, swallow it down into your belly and bring it on demand. Memorize it. Put it on this kind of memory instead of, you know, carbon-based memory instead of silicon-based memory in a USB drive. Memorize it, put it on this memory. That's the most secure. And so there was a period in our Buddhist history when people are busy memorizing texts. Okay, anybody at Berkeley who has memorized a Buddhist sutra? YC? 你会背经吗? Not to put you on the spot, of course. You don't have to answer. Anybody? Mai, did you memorize any sutras?
YC just said the Puman Pin.
Ai, Puman Pin. 20无尽意菩萨. Okay. And I always promised myself I was going to do it in English and never did. Is that David way back in the back? There he is, David. So you're so far back. And there is a novice monk. I'll use my cursor. There's an actual novice monk right there. There he is. That is Qin Xian, our brand new monk, sitting in the far back next to Guanyin Bodhisattva. Okay. So who has memorized the text? Jin Hosher, not, right?
The Heart Sutra.
Heart Sutra. Good. That's right.
Both Chinese and
When the
English.
Bodhisattva. There we go. Good. You get extra bonus points for doing 2 languages. Fang Jiahua, have you memorized any text?
大部分的地藏经，
Really?
对，
First Tour Bodhisattva Sutra. Oh my goodness. Wow. That's now that you've, now you're committed. You said it. How about that? The Erstor Bodhisattva Sutra is quite long. That's really an accomplishment. Okay, so anybody else we can embarrass live? Anybody's being modest? And is that Valerie in the front? Val, have you memorized any text? No? Okay. So, yeah. All right. Who has?
Tony says Heart Sutra in Japanese.
Heart Sutra in Japanese. Hanya Shingyo. So desu ne?
はい、
そうでしょうね。はい、そうです。Good. Okay. Well, so that's hard work, and it's kind of a curiosity. Who do you know who memorizes anything? Right? Just we don't. Like kids used to start with times tables, right? 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. And then memorization used to be the standard way you learn things. Master Hua was in the generation when that was education. The teacher came into the classroom and he gave you a text, and he went tap, 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 and you recited along with him, tap, tap, tap. That was education. What you got from it, whether you understood it, didn't matter a bit, but that you could repeat it was really important. We've come completely away from that to where our phones have, memory, our smartphones have incredible memories. So, point is, Master Hua made it important for us to encounter these texts. All right. Not only did he want us to hear about them, he would quiz us on the spot. He would say, who has any questions about this? 谁有什么问题没有啊? He would say, and we would go, roll our eyes, and he would say, if you don't ask any questions, I'm going to ask you questions. We'd say, oh, sure, but what do you mean when you say da-da-da-da-da? And he would say, oh, I'm glad you asked that. And he would explain it. He really meant it. He wanted us to not only have like a passive memory, he wanted us to make sense of those texts. Okay, why am I think if we don't recognize how special that was, I think those texts might vanish in our lifetimes. I don't think anybody's, and that's not entirely true, that's an exaggeration. I think very few people are taking the Mahayana Sutras as anything important. Why do I say that? I was just in Singapore and in Malaysia, and I spent lots of time with the young Buddhist intellectuals, people who think, smart, very smart people, who want to be Buddhist and who come to Buddhist monasteries, but are feeling a little challenged these days. And there's one man in particular, I won't mention his name, but he came to me and said, he's getting harder and harder to admit that I'm a Mahayana Buddhist. He said, all of my friends who used to be classmates of mine in our university Buddhist club, he said they have left. They are either baptized as Christians, he said, or they are following what he called Heng Sure, primitive Buddhism, or primal Buddhism. He said, or they're reading Tibetan comments, or they are just doing some sort of a psychology Buddhism hybrid, but they're not interested anymore. And he said, I have doubts. Why should I pay attention to this stuff? Because I'm the only one left, he said. Now, this man who was giving this opinion is a very intelligent guy and savvy. He's a high-tech engineer, travels overseas, and wants to be a Buddhist. He wants to have a Buddhist identity, and further, he wants his Buddhism to work for him. He wants it to matter, to count. So, good guy, kind of a pillar of the church type. And he's got serious doubts. And he says he's the only one left from his school classmates who used to all be part of the Young Buddhist Club. Okay. What is Heng Sure that he's talking about? And let me first take a step back. Oh, and by the way, for folks in Berkeley who are wondering what I've got in my robe here, probably this is a good moment to take it off, you think? This is my Singapore 50th anniversary. 50th Singaporean independence. So when I got to Singapore for our 4-day Guanyin session, I asked for a SG50 button. So probably, I'm sure there are political ramifications, so I'll take that off. And now that's going out to the internet. Uh-oh. Okay. So, all right. Now, the Heng Sure that he was talking about is a movement in Mahayana circles these days that says the only real, true Buddhism is the only reliable Buddhism, and it gets so bad they say the only true Buddhism is the Buddhism found in the Agamas and the Nikayas. These are Pali language texts, not Sanskrit language texts, which is what we got in Chinese, translated from Sanskrit. And they're wonderful texts. The Buddha really spoke them, there's no doubt about it. But they say this is the only real true Buddhism. And that the critique is that the Mahayana texts, all of our texts that Master Hua lectured on for 30 years, are maybe even phony. Maybe the Buddha never spoke them at all. They might have been written by Chinese later. The Earth-Store Sutra that Fang Jiahua said he is memorizing. That's one of the primary ones they attack. Another one is called the Shurangama Sutra, which we have here in 10 volumes, that Master Hua spent the first 90 days of his teaching in America explaining, line by line. And they're implicit in that Heng Sure is the criticism of Mahayana texts, that they're totally not worth reading. And you can't understand them either. Okay, so if that's true, we're in trouble, or we're just wasting our time. Okay, so I think it's significant to find out what is behind that critique, and that's one. Number two, he said, his other friends don't go for Heng Sure to the exclusion of others, but they're looking at Tibetan commentaries, he said. And I know one in particular that is popular, made popular over the last decade, and it's called the Pu Ti Dao Sidi Guang Lun. It's by Venerable Tsongkhapa, right? The Lama Tsongkhapa. And what is it? It's really good reading, but it's a summary. He's kind of like, I went through those texts so you don't have to. kind of like that attitude. And I'll summarize it all and lay it out easy for you to get systematically. And nothing wrong with that. That's good. And he's, Lama Tsongkhapa's wonderful teacher, certainly. Wisdom and worth listening to. The problem is, he's in between us and the Buddha. And some people prefer that. Master Hua deliberately said, we respect commentaries, we don't rely on commentaries. You yourself have enough wisdom to filter what the Buddha is saying and get 100% of the meaning from it. You go ahead. Okay, let me take a step back. Here I am in Gold Coast with my friends in Australia, who maybe has anybody ever touched a Buddhist Sutra before? Ever heard one explain? No, it's like, this is all new stuff, right? So, here's the subtlety and the complexity, which is really makes it interesting, is I'm talking about Buddhist texts for people who have no background in Buddhist texts, for whom they might think, well, this is all wonderful. I go to Singapore, and people have soured on Buddhist texts. They think Buddhist texts are not valuable. And I'm explaining to a group here in Berkeley, we're looking into this together, who are in the habit of listening to Buddhist texts every week, for whom they're alive and vital and meaningful. Now, what's the difference between this whole spectrum of texts? Why are we going over this? Okay, story. The prince jumped over the wall, went out into the woods, gave up a life of comfort and ease and security for no comfort, for discomfort, for difficulty and total insecurity. He could have died any minute from snakes, tigers, bandits, cold, exposure, hunger. And 6 years later, he woke up, came the Buddha. The story goes, the way we heard it was, the Buddha took 21 days trying to decide what to do next. And one thing he said was, they're not going to get it, it's too, they can't really understand. People are too much into their desire to ever to get it. And so I'm going to enter nirvana. I'm going to just retire, basically, now. Well, the story goes that all these gods, the devas, at that point came down and said, oh, no, 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 people are suffering, people are confused, you got to teach. They'll get it. Find a way to explain it. Please make the effort. And so the Buddha said, okay. So he did. But he had to be reminded of his vows to teach. And then he did. And so he started walking, and he went to the deer park, the Deer Wilds Park, found 5 former companions who he talked to, and who one of them woke up immediately, and the other 4 woke up subsequently. So he had now 5 enlightened disciples. And from that time, for the next 49 years, he taught. And his teaching, as they say, divided into 5 different periods to correspond to his disciples' growing wisdom and their capacity to understand. The technical language is their samadhi, their wisdom, their stillness of mind, which allowed them to absorb more of what he was trying to share. So the tradition says that the Buddha taught for 49 years in 300 different assemblies. And it always proceeded with something that Sam just did by walking around and kneeling down and saying, please turn the Dharma wheel. The Buddha didn't say, sutra time, sit down, I'm going to, get out your cell smartphones and hit voice memo because I'm going to talk. He didn't say that. He said, oh, you have a problem, you have a question? Sure, I'd be happy to. Or the king invited him to lunch, and the Buddha would say, Your Highness, since you've given us food, we'll give you Dharma. Spoke there, that kind of situation. Sometimes it was more vital. 2 countries are going to war, and the Buddha spoke Dharma about the futility of killing over water. They were going to war over water rights, which is a lesson for us in California in the 21st century. then he also, a woman came up to him with her dead baby under her arm. She had refused to accept that her newborn infant was dead. She was clinging to it 3 days later, and the Buddha had to calm her mind and wake her up to the reality of impermanence. So these are the situations when the Buddha spoke the Dharma. And they say there is several exceptions. One was immediately upon enlightenment. The Buddha had his wisdom now functioning. His eyes were seeing differently. And right while sitting beneath the Bodhi, he spoke the Avatamsaka Sutra, which, excuse me, how the universe looks through his newly awakened eyes. And that's the text that we are lecturing on. This is an Avatamsaka Sutra lecture right this minute. And next week we're going to adjust our texts to make sure that we can plug into where I left off back in Berkeley. So I'm going to be corresponding with some folks, maybe YC and Feda Jinchuan Jinhusher, to make sure we get our text lined up for next week. But I'm talking about the sutra tonight. So that was one exception. He spoke that sutra first to say, here's what I see. Here's how the universe looks. So it has a cosmic view in it. But later on, let me give one, of those 5 different periods. There was one called the Prajna period, which was special because the Buddha's disciples, in their meditation, had now gotten to a place where they could actually hear more deeply. And so the Buddha talked about emptiness. That's the particular hallmark teaching in the Prajna Sutras, is this teaching on emptiness and how to empty out emptiness, to bring it back to fullness, right? Bring it back to reality. So only when the disciples were able to hear it did he speak about emptiness and prajna wisdom. So that period is not Heng Sure. It's not the primary period. This movement that says the only sutras that are real and reliable are primary sutras doesn't take into account the progress the Buddhist disciples made as they meditated. And so I'm curious about that. The problem with explaining prajna and emptiness is if we in our meditation haven't got to that state of stillness, it doesn't necessarily make sense on the surface. You have to hear more deeply. So I think what has happened in Mahayana circles is people have quit. They've given up. They haven't let their meditation catch up with their intellectual grasp. And so they say, well, you can't understand it. There's something wrong with the Dharma. Let's go back to the stuff that the Buddha was explaining at the beginning, because why? We can understand that. And I think that's kind of punting the football back. That's not really doing it responsibly. So anyway, that's one state. The other criticism, that you need a commentary. I have to explain that to my friends here in Australia, and maybe even the friends in Berkeley who have only listened to Dharma in our monasteries. There's a custom, and let me put this with a story. We had a Japanese Dharma teacher friend, Reverend Fujita, visit Berkeley just now, I guess it was 6 weeks ago. And Reverend Fujita is a teacher of Zen. He's in the Soto Zen tradition, and he's a really good and teach lots and lots of experience speaking to Westerners. And he's really good at it, at explaining meditation in the various states. And he's got a profound and broad understanding of the Dharma. So we were sitting in the dining room, and he said, "What do you teach here? What do you do?" And I said, "Well, we explain sutras." He said, "Oh, really? What sutra?" I said, "Well, I'm explaining the Avatamsaka Sutra." And he said, "Why?" Why? I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "Nobody can understand that. And I said, what do you mean nobody understands? He said, well, our teacher, and I was in his lineage back in 1969, when I began Buddhism, and he said, Uchiyama, our teacher, used to recite it at night to go to sleep. It's just a bunch of lists of worlds and world systems, and he would, deliberately recite it so he could put him to sleep. You can understand. And I said, well, that's not my approach. And then he said, well, that stuff about like that interpenetration without obstruction and noumena and phenomena interspersing, he said, you can explain that? And I said, no, I don't even try. Well, why not? That's the Avatamsaka. I said, no, actually, it's not. That is a commentary to the Avatamsaka, developed and extrapolated by Master Fa Zang, who was a monk in the Tang dynasty. Everybody reads first. It's brilliant. It's magnificent. It's a tour de force. It's like genius summarizing of what the Buddha taught. I said, Fujita Sensei, I said, you're representing exactly this, that my teacher was reacting against, which is what? It's the notion that we are incapable of understanding the sutra without the commentary. And anybody in Asian Buddhist circles is going, yeah. Anybody who doesn't understand, what? Why? Well, okay, flip it over. Bible, Holy Bible, okay. In Judaism, what do they say? Midrash. You don't really encounter the Torah after your bar mitzvah. You get a couple lines and you explain them, but you're following some, Rabbi Heschel or some of the great commentators of the past. You don't do it, and when you get to Christianity, to Roman Catholicism, you have, Thomas Aquinas, Summa Theologica. Those are commentaries. And for people who say, well, what did God mean? Or when he put through Moses and through Abraham, what did he mean? Well, you go read what the learned sages of the past, who somehow were closer to God, further back. So they must know more. That's what you do in Christianity. Well, Master Hua would have said, I'm really interested in finding out, God's voice or Jesus' voice in the Gospels. Let's read it. Let's find out. That would be his approach. You pay your respects to the Summa Theologica, set it to one side, and try it out. What nutrition does your wisdom body get from the words of the Bible? That would have been his equivalent approach, all right? So in Asia, man, you don't read text. If you explain texts, you go to commentaries. And honestly, commentaries, to my mind, interesting, good for reference, really valuable, but you're listening to the thoughts of a person reflecting on the Buddha. So you're one step away from the Buddha. And once you get the flavor of the sutra itself, unmediated, whoa, it's really hard to go back. It's really hard to be content with a commentary. So I think that was what Reverend Fujita was saying, is why do you do that? Nobody understands it. Besides, the commentaries are so philosophically profound, right? All right, so I said, yeah, I know about that, but I fall asleep as soon as I touch Master Fa Zang's commentary. What I like about the sutra is the flesh and blood, the beating heart, the genuine emotion, the purified resolve, the courage, the determination. As living beings are suffering like mad, they're confused, they're like people in the dark without a flashlight. Who's going to save them? I have to find a way to save them. So he does. That's what that's what motivates me time and again to read the sutra. At the City of 10,000 Buddhas up in Ukiah, where I'm lecturing on yet another chapter of the Avatamsaka called the 10 Dedications chapter, the 10 Assurances. there's coming up to a section where, what is the Bodhisattva doing? He goes down into prisons. And in the prisons, he witnesses grievous tortures. And the sutra describes the rack and dismembering and being fed to animals and stuff, kind of medieval, you'd assume Indian tortures. And the Bodhisattva says, these are living beings who've committed offenses who need to pay them back. He said, take it out of my skin. I will substitute myself for these prisoners. And makes that vow to do that. He's going to go in and stand in for the suffering, which you go, that's a fairly enlightened penal code if you can do that. Wow, correction system, can you stand in for somebody? But he says, I'm willing to do that. And then he takes the merit and virtue from doing that and transfers it out to the world. So it's like, okay, I'll never forget that as long as I live. There's somebody hypothetical, some, archetypal bodhisattva, but the sentiment is there. And it's believable as he's saying it. He's saying, yeah. He said, I don't want them to suffer. I can take it. I'm stronger there than they are. Give me their punishment. Let me work off their debt and let them go free. Good. Wow, that's altruistic to the extreme, right? The sutra is full of this kind of heroic martyrdom, but it makes you wonder, how far would I go how far out of my way do I go to help somebody else? And the classic idea, driving along, you see somebody drowning, you try to jump in and save them. You see a baby crawling towards the highway. Do you stop the car and go pull her back? You see, an animal trying to cross a road. Do you get out and try to protect the animal? Different situations that we find ourselves in every day where it's cost to us to go save somebody. Yeah. Well, in the sutra, the Bodhisattva is giving up his body for prisoners who are being tortured. Well, okay. Is that philosophical? No, it's ethical, moral. But it's inspiring. It sets a whole standard for what is possible as a human. So I find in the Avatamsaka Sutra this description of humanity's best, kind of like a high yardstick that I so rarely measure up to, but it's nice to know that those thoughts are still out there. And if we say, oh, the Buddha never said it, let's go back to primal Buddhism, we need a commentary because it's philosophical. Go, what sutra were you not reading when you made those conclusions? Like maybe if you read the Avatamsaka Sutra, you might, I think mostly it comes from people doing hearsay. They've never really tried it. And it's a big, maybe intimidating book. So that's one thought. Let me bounce it back to Berkeley. And I know when I say things like this, Roberto almost always puts his hand up and says something. And if he doesn't, maybe Stephen beside him would say something. Stephen, you have to go find Professor Dung, all right? Go connect. I'll say that's off the record. You can delete that from. Yeah. Okay, Tony, commentary. Have you heard any of these truths, Roberto? Anybody? Does this? Have you heard this kind of stuff? Roberto's first.
Well, remember my limitations is that all the suttas that I learned from the lectures of Bhikkhu Bodhi. And he has his ideas about the order in which the suttas were preserved and translated to different languages. So I vaguely remember that the Sanskrit, the suttas in Sanskrit that were translated into Chinese sometimes are older than the Pali Canon. But I'm not sure of that. But I vaguely remember something like that. So, it's just a matter of, I don't know, putting in place for what we can find out or what we know, without dismissing what came after. You cannot dismiss Saint Thomas Aquinas. Forget it. You can't. It's just part of the history of Catholicism. So, yeah. So, uh, I'm I'm all for it. All is good, and all is beneficial, actually. So it doesn't matter where you go. You know, at the end, if it has something to do with Buddhism, it's beneficial. Even the latest incarnations of lay Buddhism, or they don't even mention the Buddha. It's just concentration and this and that. Well, it's still beneficial, and eventually, I hope that those people that take that road eventually say, "Well, but this came from where?" That's Thank you.
I tasted that on my tongue. I'd like to take it like a mouthful and swallow it. Yeah. Good. Okay. Appreciate that comment.
My comment is, in my Japanese Zen training, it was not about the sutras. It was about Tong and Song masters and their spoken comments. And their interest is simply in awakening people's mind. And so they, this is where we get the koan tradition of sparking some kind of a creative awakening. And the Heart Sutra, of course, is key to East Asian Buddhism. But so I found myself, I found a great deal that was quite wonderful about the Zen tradition, about meditation practice, about group sesshin and that kind of thing. But some of the principles and some of the Buddhist background was missing. I had no cosmology. I had no understanding of matters pertaining to the cycle of birth and death. These questions were not really considered relevant because the only relevant thing was waking up. So there was for me as a historian and as a scholar, I needed a little bit more background and some more principles.
Okay. Useful. Thank you. I'm going to point to one more approach. Feda is in the front row, and I'm not going to put him on the spot, but Feda is in the department at UC Berkeley, where I spent 6 years, doing academic investigation of the text. That's another road. It's another way in, is to look at language, to look at the history of the texts, to look at the versions, the recensions. There's how many different editions do we have, and what kind of manuscripts? Did it come out of, where was it dug up? First of all, was it dug up out in Dunhuang, found in a sandstone cave, out in the desert, or was it in a library rescued from Japan somewhere? So that's a scholarly approach, and it's valuable and significant, but it doesn't yield the same flavor that I get when I approach the text the way Master Hua presented it. And Feda, I mentioned your name. Feel free if you have a comment or something at any point. I didn't raise a question for you, but if you want to, everybody should feel empowered to chip in. And over on the women's side, if anybody would like to speak, please do. Are you holding a mic there, Feda?
Yes,
You're
I
half
am.
on the camera. Okay. You're done. Translate it to Dutch for yourself, all right? Please?
You sure about? Yeah, I mean, just sort of. I'm actually currently finishing my program, and what you're saying resonates a lot with me, and in a way, I'm.
Yep.
I almost am a little bit amused, or kind of see some irony when people in the Buddhist world take the scholarly approach as actually saying something about the value of Buddhist texts.
Mm-hmm.
it seems somewhat. I mean, it's imposing on Buddhism a certain view of history and of time that's very specifically modern and doesn't quite, at least within, from my limited view, work for the Buddhist sense of time and space, and
Right.
also what the Buddhist Buddhist wisdom comes from.
Yeah, good. All right, I appreciate that. That leads me into an idea. Would you give me one each of those volumes on the table there, Jin Fang Shi? Give me one that you're looking at, and that's in English. And then, yeah, good. Okay. Jin Fang Shi has, by the way, is Laura there tonight? I can't see Laura. Okay. Cousin Jennifer is there. Good. So we have some cousin action. There she is. Good. All right. This is our one of our proud products of the Berkeley Monastery Buddhist. Okay. Here is what am I holding here? This is one of 20 volumes of Master Hua's. It says 大方广佛法严经前世, right? The Maha-Buddha Vaipulya Avatamsaka Sutra commentary. And this includes the dark print is the sutra, and then the lighter print is Master Hua's commentary. So he was explaining the text. So we have this, and this is a historical document. This takes its place right alongside Master Fa Zhang and Master Chongguan, various Avatamsaka patriarchs. Here is a condensed volume of the sutra. This is volume number 3 out of probably 12. And here's a picture of the Buddha. That's actually looks like could be Indian Buddha. And here's the front page. There's our logo, because we reprinted this. This is from Malaysia, I believe it was reprinted. And so the Chinese goes this way, goes backwards from Western. Table of contents of this particular volume, and then comes, and it starts. Right? There it is. It begins like that. And so here's the sutra. You go like this. And it's that thick, It's got a nice little bookmark. So there's a Chinese text. Here is a bigger edition of the same text, and this one is useful. How? This is useful for reciting, and didn't make that point. This is a Chinese tradition Buddha. Different Buddha images at the start, and you open it up, and this is ready to chant, to recite. And a point that I'd like to make is, that I haven't made, it's not that sutras have vanished in Asia at all, but people's relationship to them has pretty much gone to ritual use. What do you do with a sutra? You chant it. There's a sense that that's real valuable, that there's real value in going, thus I have heard at one time the Buddha drove Astravasti in the Jade Grove and the Garden of Benefactor. And they'll gather large gatherings of people together to open page 1 and chant all the way through. We do it at the City of 10,000 Buddhas every single day for an hour. And sometimes, here at Gold Coast, we just had a 21-day Avatamsaka Sutra recitation, right? 21 days? 2 weeks. You did it in 2 weeks. That's fast. Yeah, usually it's 21 days. Where every day for 8 hours, 9 hours, you just go through the text. And is it important to understand it? It's good to understand it, not important as reciting. Text as sacred object, right? Not as Buddha's wisdom, not as what Master Hua said, a mirror that shows you your own face. Wisdom that you can't do without for even a second. So, a blueprint to understanding your own mind. The road home. That's what he said the sutras are. They're medicine, you see. They show you your own face when you're healthiest. That's what sutras do. And it was like, oh, yeah? Let me try one, let me give me a sutra, let me try it. That's what he said they're for, and that's how they work, and that's their. So I wanted to get this last one. Look at this. This is the Avatamsaka Sutra, 10 Grounds chapter. There. With flower adornment, flower garland, Avatamsaka in Sanskrit, with Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, right there. And this is chapter 26, sutra text only. And there we go. All right. Why am I showing you this? It's because this didn't exist before. When was this printed? Like last year? This year?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay. Here is a English language provisional, right? Manuscript, spiral bound, Buddha Sutra. This is the Buddha's voice. Words of the Buddha, right here. And I'm telling you this because in the past, not too long ago, you might have said to yourself, did the Buddha ever say anything? How do we know what the Buddha said? I mean, meditate, I get peaceful. I meditate, I like it. I like to get quiet that way, kind of get a sense of connection with something. But the Buddha, this person, spoke. Do we know what he said? How long ago did he live? Over here, 2,600 years ago. Is there any chance whatsoever that his words would not be distorted over all that time? Go, yeah. They say, we know essentially what Jesus said according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and there's disagreement, but we know we preserve some of it. The Buddha, 500 years earlier, we know a lot about what he said. And it's been transmitted and translated, and it's now here in English. Not only that, it's bound, titled, printed, translated. Here's the words of the Buddha. Okay, that's the starting point. And only because our teacher, this Master Shenhua, said, I want you to understand this stuff, am I sitting here explaining this, and our people listen every Saturday night at Berkeley, every night at CTDB. And so we have access to the Buddha's wisdom in our own language. It's in Vietnamese, it's in Tibetan, it's in Korean, it's in, we're translating it busily into Spanish and French and German, etc. So that's our takeoff point. And it gets really interesting when we use this kind of like shoes to put on your feet and walk in it and find out where they carry you and what it feels like to walk in sutra shoes. That sounds disrespectful to put the sutra on the ground, but it's an analogy, right? You get the point. So it's like, okay, that's interesting. What is there to learn from the Buddha? Can I pull those filters off? Then, what if we're stuck with this? Okay, it's in English. I don't understand it. What's he saying? I don't get it. The Bodhisattva vows to take across infinite living beings, but there are no living beings taken across. So that's a contradiction. That makes sense? Who understands that? Well, find out, focus. Who was he talking to, and liberations, and work on it, chew on it. Okay, here's the last point I wanted to make before I kind of say what I wanted to say about this this whole question of hearing the Buddha's voice. And It's that people in Asia, where these sutras have been around, relate to them in a variety of ways. Kind of similar to the way some Christians, what do they do? I mentioned reciting. People recite them. What else do? They copy them by hand. It's meritorious to copy them out. They reprint them. This is a reprinted sutra in Malaysia. They got money together and did up a bunch. Did a very nice job. Okay, that's a method. What else do? They decorate them. They adorn the covers and make them very beautiful. In Shanxi province, out in the far west of China, I saw a copy of Lotus Sutra that had been printed on paper with lapis lazuli coating on it in golden ink and adorned and festooned with gemstones. It made it through the Cultural Revolution because the abbot of the monastery, when the Red Guards came rolling in, the abbot of the monastery threw it onto the altar and covered it with dust and said, "This is just our ceremony books. We have to do something. Don't mess with them. They've been here forever. They're filthy. You don't want to dirty your hands with them, right?" So the Red Guards go, "Yeah, a bunch of trash." Run away. Dusts off the golden ink and the lapis lazuli paper. Saved it. There's another famous story about, this is not to the point, but in Ningbo at Ayurwang Monastery, the canny abbot saved the Buddha's sharira, the Buddha's relic, that's a priceless thing, by hiding it in the wall and then covering the wall with posters of Chairman Mao. And so the Red Guards ran through and Chairman Mao ran in. Coast is clear. Anyway, that's a story for another time. So, with sutras, how do we have these relationships? Personally, I did something that I'd seen done, but never, thought of doing it. I bowed to the text every day for 8 hours a day for 2.5 years on a pilgrimage. I carried it on my back and bowed, recited the name of the sutra with every bow. So different relationships with sacred objects, right? How do you get it to open up? And the point is to make it talk to you, to look at it and go, all right, it's a book, but it's a different book. It's got wisdom that you don't find anywhere else. And how am I going to make it talk to me? Make it make sense? That's the challenge. That's the question. Anybody have a comment? I'm going on and on. I see people's eyes glazing over. Enough already with the sutra. Sing a song or do something. Okay. Who's got a comment about relationships with texts? And has anybody from the first time that you came to the monastery and thought you wanted to maybe investigate meditation to where you're sitting here hearing about text, has anything changed over the weeks, months, or years since you've been here? Your mom was an educator. She had schools. How did she approach Buddhist texts? Did she ever teach you anything about texts, or did she recite them or anything? And
she likes to teach us by practicing. She always told us that Buddhists have to be nice to people, don't talk bad about people. And she taught us about 5 precepts, but by example, by living, not by the text. And later on, I learned the text from Master Hoa and from you. So we are grateful to attend your lecture today. And what you said really make me feel like I need to memorize the sutra. That's another approach that I need to improve my practice. And I'm grateful that you come to Berkeley lecture every week. So please continue.
Okay. Even when my body is here on the Gold Coast.
Sir, this is Nam.
Okay, Nam, yeah.
I have a question.
Raise your hand. Are you back there? That's you in the back?
Yes. How
Okay, there you go. Go for it.
I have a problem when I read the sutra. It tends to be like after a while I feel kind of like drift off. How do I prepare to fight that off?
Quente, describe the situation. Give me another example.
I don't.
You're reciting, right?
I
When
read
you're
it
reciting.
like about recited, and I read about like one page, and then the second page I start to drift off, and then it just like cannot go further than that. What do I do? I need to stop, or do I need refresh myself, or I continue?
Okay. Can I see, now this is an anonymous quiz. Nobody has to give any. Could I see the hands of people who have had Nam's experience? You go to recite the sutra and you nod off. Anybody there brave admit that happens? You guys, wow, I'm the only one. Oh, that's embarrassing. Okay. Namana, yeah, okay, right. So what happens? I have like picked myself up off the altar like 2 hours later and found that I transferred oil from my forehead onto the page, and the page had transferred my forehead. And like, oh, it was embarrassing. It's like, oh, that's one way to memorize the text, absorb it through the skin. It's like, I don't think that's what he meant. Yeah, me too. I've done that a lot. And I think, the question I asked Master Hua, I asked Shifu about that. And he said, 你的业障太深重, he said. Your karmic obstacles are simply too heavy, he said, which is a typical Chan master answer, but behind it is true. On one hand, I know Nam works a lot with his body every day, and when it comes time at night to like recite a sutra, you're tired. Me too. I would go long. And whenever I got time to recite, my practice time, right? This is my homework time. Usually it was like after 9 o'clock at night, and I'd had an 18-hour day of doing stuff in the monastery, and I was just tired. And so one solution is, if you prioritize your sutra recitation, do it at a time when you're fresh, right? That's one. Number two, what you can do, I think you can get matchsticks and prop up your eyelids so that you're just doing that. It's like that. That's another solution. You've seen those old pictures of the Chinese scholars preparing for their exams in the district and in the state, in the province, and then up to the capital. And they would hang their hair from the rafters, right? So if they fell, they would jerk back up. Different ways, not recommended. I didn't really say that as that was a joke. You all understand that was a joke. For me, I can't do that because I don't have any hair, but So what do you do, Nam? A little bit of coffee might help, but ideally, the question is it the sutra making you fall asleep because it's, quote, boring? Or is it that our minds are simply going so fast that the text is slowing us down and we get so relaxed that we fall asleep? Probably all of the above. So I would check it out this way. One question is, am I physically tired? If my mind is sleepy, then it could be any book would put me to sleep. In that case, just get more sleep or recite in the morning. Two, question would be, is it the content of the sutra that's making me sleepy? And Master Hua's answer, your karmic obstacles are so heavy that you, even though this is the Buddha's voice, you're falling asleep because you're bad. That's not a very happy answer, and I don't think the Buddha would say that. So what really is going on? Hey, Fang Jiahua, have you encountered that situation, and what do you do when it's like you find yourself getting drowsy? 你头困的时候怎么处理呢？
其实那个《地藏经》这个卷舍里面有讲说啊， 就是说，你念地藏经的时候，就是经常那个，就是说宣读宣化都会是世人有业障过不顾，于大成经不能尽，供养地藏以香花、衣服、饮食、住玩具，以尽水岸大士前，一日一夜求福之。
You're showing off. Come on.
所以说
I know
这些
you're
东西
showing
的
off.
话，这就是一个 common 的，就是业障的问题啊。所以说，只要你能够好好练地藏经，这个问题应该会解决的。So I
Okay.
will.
So, yeah. Go ahead. 你说，你自己翻译自己好。
Oh, I just I recite one section of in the section 12, I think, surgeon. It's it mentioned about and if you recite the sutras, every time you recite and you recite and also you cannot memorize, then it suggests you need to sincerely recite the Asto Bodhisattva and also Asto Bodhisattva Sutra, and also sincere over the flower and incense. So continue for 7 days and 7 nights, then you can gradually improve. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Fang Zhenghua. So what Fang Zhenghua is suggesting is something that I really want to say very straight, which is, now if you would want to change that, to fall asleep when you're reciting is kind of a minor irritation. It's a little frustrating because you're obviously not in control. I'm not in control when I nod out when I'm reciting, and I've had that happen a lot. And I would like to be respectful to the text. I'd like to, quote, get something out of my recitation, a sense of calmness and all. And I'd like to succeed in what I'm trying to do. When I nod out, I'm not successful. If we really want to change that, then look at the nature of the problem, which is the sutra is not an ordinary book. It's not like reciting the phone directory or the newspaper. It's the Buddha's wisdom, it's the Buddha's voice. And when that level of text and insight touches my mind, what I see is my normal state of mind, which is pretty chaotic. The mind that I use to, read the New York Times online, my mind is scattered, flipping from column to column, going through the sports result and then to the international news and then opinions. And if I can scan, I can skim, I can, click on the next link if I want to. It's not a steady focus. The sutra holds you to this focus. And the result is, it's like looking at my mind, which is opaque, not clear, not totally dark. It's kind of opaque most of the time. If I say, okay, thank you for showing me that sutra, I want to be able to control my mind. What you can do is do what the sutra says, which is make the sutra really special. Say, okay, I'm going to wash my hands, rinse my mouth, wash my face before I recite. I'm going to light some incense before I recite. I'm going to move towards sutra as ritual object, something sacred. Because why? I want to transform my consciousness through this practice. I want to take this as something more than just another book. So prepare yourself a little bit, just some, superficial rituals. Wash your hands and face, or rinse your mouth. And light some incense. Make it a clean place where you recite. Do it the same time every night. And plan for success. Say, okay, usually I nod out by about 15 minutes, okay? I'm going to do exactly 15 minutes tonight. If I succeed, next week, I'm going to up it to 20. Following week, 25. And give yourself a graduated program of increased difficulty, but guaranteeing that you can do it. So don't leave it open-ended, like I'll recite until I fall asleep. That's you're never going to change, right? And you're going to drop it. You'll abandon it because it's kind of mildly frustrating. Okay? So I'm suggesting that if you really want to do it and get through that gate where you're in charge of your mind, the sutra will help you. It's kind of amazing how responsive those texts are. It's more than a book. And so recite it, with a little bit of preparation. Do it regularly and give yourself a little bit more time each time. And my guess is it's now, beginning August. Probably by November or Christmas time, you won't be falling asleep when you recite. What do you think, Nam? Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Sorry,
Sure.
Fosh.
Yes.
It does. Okay, yeah, try it. I was giving you an out. No, I think I'm going to go meditate instead. Well, Nam is a meditator, but I'm glad that you're reciting. That's good. Okay, more questions. Anybody got a question here about sutras? And we don't do regular lectures here, so it's kind of a tease. I'm just telling you about it, but I'm not going to satisfy you. I could recite some here.
It's very good. When I don't do a long time, but very short time.
We hold on there. We have a question here. Go ahead.
You have two different groups. We just do recently Yuanjue, which is only small session by session, like one night only maybe 1 or 2 sessions.
Okay.
As someone can explain to us, and all the time before I go to bed or like just about before go to sleep, I always feel the very, very strong light. Come back very bright.
Okay.
Yeah, very bright light.
This is Linda, right?
Yeah.
You're Linda. Okay.
Yeah, I never feel like someone like see. For me, I can see maybe that is like 模考，像模考了。他说：“哎呀，我要来读经。”那个模也不说：“哎呀，你不要来，不要读，我让打盹，我让你怎么样。” At least I feel.
Okay.
I think like that. So if your body physically tired, just go to sleep. Don't give yourself I have to, because I'm a monk or a nun, I have to practice 2 hours. I have to read 2 hours. Even my mind or I can't concentrate for 2 hours. I still go sick. I have to sit there for 2 hours. No any efficiency. So if tired, just maybe 20 minutes. They go to sleep. The next day, if you have very good, you recover a bit. You pretty sure get more result from it.
Okay.
This is how I feel.
Great. So Linda is sharing her experience. She says that, what was this tree you said, Yuanjue Jing? Yeah, that she and, this is here in Gold Coast, or?
No, online.
Online.
QQ.
Oh. On?
QQ.
QQ. Okay. She and friends will get online to recite the Yuanjue Jing, and she said that she had the experience of afterwards going back home feeling light as the experience, and she was confirming that it's good to kind of regulate the time so that you succeed in your recitation. Is that essentially what you said? Yeah, that's her experience too. Good. Okay.
Sure, there was a question from online.
Okay. Yeah, so this is a question from online. Go ahead.
Question was, when you mentioned bowing to the Avatamsaka Sutra, were you referring to repeating the title, or like bowing to the title, or bowing to each word?
Yeah. Okay. This is interesting, and I'm aware that we're heading towards 2 o'clock. We've got about 6 minutes left here. So, I mentioned that when I did a pilgrimage based on the text, I approached the text in a variety of ways. One was I had a small edition of it, which was about this big. Well, the whole entire sutra, really small print, which I put in a backpack and carried on my back every day. So I was burying the sutra in the back. We also explained the text to each other at night. I would read it in Chinese, and then we would Marty translate it. So we investigated it that way. And I was memorizing it. I memorized not the entire Shi Heng practices chapter. I got to practice number 7. And I think I lost it now. I'd have to refresh it. But I was memorizing it. We were copying at night. And then, as the questioner asked, with every bow, I would recite the name of the sutra. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing, bow, Hua Yan Hai Hui Fo Pusa, stand up, and then 3 steps. And so I was reciting the name of the sutra. Earlier than that, when I was just a beginning monk at Gold Mountain Monastery, I would bow to every single word in the text. 1 bow per character. So thus, bow, I bow, have bow, heard, at, 1, like that time. Is that, yeah, Bai Jing, Jiao Bai Jing. Bowing to every word, and it's a really different way of approaching text compared to the speed reading that I did as a grad student. You know, as a grad student, I would open like 3 books and stack on top of each other with the spines open like that, reading them all at the same time. I retained nothing, but it was just an approach. And when you read, when you bow to 1 character at a time, oh my goodness, it's, first of all, your mind rebels. It's like, this is stupid, this is crazy, nobody does this, this is so boring, I can't understand. And then after your mind kind of gives up, you realize, I remember what I was about, that was really interesting. It's a whole different approach. So, bowing to sutras, that's what, to answer the question online. There are groups in the Buddhist world who say, all you need is the name of the sutra only. You don't need the entire sutra. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. The Nichiren Shoshu tradition says that the name of the Lotus Sutra is so powerful that the entire sutra's merit is contained in the name only. That's a lot. That's losing a lot. And certainly the name is good, but if the name is good, I bet the whole sutra is even better. So, okay, time for another question. And how about some evaluations of this experience? What do people think? Is this a good thing to do? David, in the back, what do you all think? Is this worthwhile?
I think it's very good.
Good. We got a vote here.
It's all right.
Saying yes.
I like
Well,
this.
I kind of heard.
I like this
Yes, go ahead.
procedure you're doing, and it's challenging to my mind. It's 9 p.m. here, but I feel so alive and ready to go.
Oh my goodness. Somebody tie him down. Once he gets going, I don't, that's David. Okay, good. Thanks for the comment. Anybody else? What do you think?
I think over on our
Yes?
side, what we could do, because everyone's sitting really near the screen, and when I was sitting in front, my neck started to ache after a while. So I think next week what we'll do is we'll lower the screen and adjust the projector, so maybe a foot or 2 might help. And we'll also move everyone back.
Okay.
We'll try to have people maybe like 8 or 10 feet back, and so that the angle towards the screen is not as great, because like David sitting right at the back, he has a very comfortable view.
David is this big in my field of view.
Yeah, so
right, just like that.
So what we'll do as we
There-
move towards the back, we'll also move the camera with the people. So not only you'll see, say, Angela at the same distance, you get to see David a lot closer as well.
Great.
But
Okay.
I think the internet connection when we tested a few days ago at Paramita House was a lot better than the connection right now in the office.
Actually, you know what, Heng Sure, that connection was here. It
Oh.
wasn't at Paramita House, right? Yeah, we tested it here. So
Ah.
yeah,
That's really weird because
funny, huh?
yeah, today's connection is maybe I would say 30% of what we experienced the other day.
Wow. That's good. Okay. Am I like the 1984 Apple computer commercial with the big talking head in the center? Am I super big? If I sat back, would it be better if I was like here?
Yuan Lin
think?
is sending you a picture right now of what you look
Okay.
like, and
Okay.
but that's okay, because once you share your screen, we'll be seeing the text, and you will be a lot smaller. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I'll set up our auxiliary screen.
Does anyone in Berkeley have any comments or ideas or suggestions? Okay, Angela has one.
I just want to say that I really like this presentation. It's really nice to see you kind of large and here. And I also think like the seating is a matter of preference. Like I'm one of those people in movie theaters that likes to sit on the front row, so this is actually okay for me. But I think definitely the AV quality is coming through a little shaky for us. And there have been just a few moments where the sound has cut out. So when you see people like, pausing, it was because we got a little bit of shaky sound. But generally pretty
Interesting.
good.
Because it's been very consistent for us here. Yeah. It's there, but on my screen it's really good. All right, that's good. Anybody else with any text suggestions? And
Yeah, actually, this is Stephen.
Hi, Stephen.
Hey, I'm thinking when you actually do a screen share, if you have text that you're scrolling through, it's going to pixelate really badly and make us a little dizzy. So I would suggest laying text out on individual slides and moving through them that way so that the text on the screen isn't moving. I'd also, use a serif font because that's easier to read on a screen as opposed to sans serif, which is easier to read in print. Also, sometimes when someone is on a microphone, you can hear an echo through coming back toward. I can hear myself or whoever's speaking coming through your speakers. So,
yeah.
It might be.
I'm using this guy.
Ah.
So it's a constant speaker.
Yeah.
I
so
wonder
that's something to be conscious of.
Good. Okay, those are helpful suggestions. Okay. Yanlin, do you have any suggestions? Jerry emailed, who has also been setting up with us, and Jerry said that on my end, the light and the sound is important, especially the angle of the camera. So if I'm like looking down, it's different, and if I'm, if the monitor is tilted up, it's different, and that the quality of sound is really important. And I think I'm just using the stock Macintosh laptop setup, which seems to be working okay.
Yeah, for sure. I think maybe we can troubleshoot a bit more offline the bandwidth and see if we can get a better picture quality.
Good.
And regarding the echo that someone heard, the Jabra should, be completely free from that. So it may be a settings issue. We can work on that offline.
Great. Okay, lovely. All right. Well, I'm going to pick up my 1932 guitar that came from us in Brisbane. It is rebuilt from about 5 different guitars. It's Zombie, very sweet, 1932 silver. It's probably a silver tone, a harmony, and it's a lovely tone. It's so that makes it probably the oldest person in the room, no doubt, in his 80s. And let's do dedication of merit. And thank you all for joining. And this is really a work in progress. I think promising for the first attempt. Look forward to seeing everybody here next week at the same time. And if I bring up my screen, they won't see it, right?
I think they have sharing screen.
If I bring up dedication of merit.
Yeah.
You guys have it there on your, now we'll bring it up for our group here, and then you all have it, okay, show my screen, there we go. We'll find it, I know. This is it. All right. So let's now dedicate our merit, however we would choose to do so, around the world, around the planet, around the cosmos, as far as our minds can reach. Here we go. as one and radiant light. Share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see our hands and hearts can find in giving unity, take our minds away to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward, may all whose sorrow be there and grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and kind. May all become compassionate and kind. Okay, I think before we say goodbye, we should. I'm going to turn the camera around so everybody can see who's here. There's Jinfeng Sure. Should I say hello? And that is Anton is here. And Linda. And Cheryl with a C. Where's Cheryl? Here we go. This is our group. Oh, she's got it. Especially, oh, want everybody to see Jinfeng Sure? Look at this. Because she's been sitting here patiently listening to it. Jinho is waving. I'm trying to, let's see. Trying to trick the camera into Yay.
Hi everyone. Great to see you all.
There we are. Okay. Okay, Jinho Sure, you want to lead everybody in 3 bows and we'll sign off and see you all next week.
Okay.
Okay, Omipofo, bye-bye.
Amitofo. 3 bows to the Buddha.